So I'm experimenting with making my own mechanical keyboard, and the idea is that the mechanical keyboard can be taken apart and rebuilt over and over again with different layouts for experimenting. So I'm using these Amoeba boards. They're tiny little boards for individual keyboard switches. And instead of making everything perfectly soldered together permanently, thought about using these little header pins that I soldered to the board, and these tiny little connector pins that were stuffed in there for the LEDs and for the switches. So ideally, you create a 3D printed panel that fits the switch. Oops, fits the switch in there. Then the switch should connect right into the board. If the pin wasn't bent. Get right in there. There we go. Now it's perfectly put together. And on top of that, the LED should slide right into place, and she'll be able to plop it right into the pin with a little bit of force. And of course, the resistor that probably should be soldered to the board fell out. So plop that back in into the pins. Again, this is all experimental and for fun and giggles. There we go. We add the switch. And here we have our keyboard button. And if we look at the screen, you have click, double click, double click, and long press. LEDs are not working very well right now because the resistor isn't pressed in right very well. Everything's a little loose. There we go. So yeah, that's pretty much it. Once you get one button working, the next step is to get a matrix of buttons working. So far, I coded everything in Arduino, and I'm going to put the code on GitHub. So I started off with a simple matrix of a 1x1, but I did program it as a matrix. So there's a scan to see which buttons are turned on, or open, I should say, at the time. So yeah, this is pretty much the first part, which is one button. So I'm going to move on to the next part, which is going to be 4 buttons, the 2x2 matrix. And then the final part would be to use a joystick and to simulate a mouse movement and a rotary encoder for a scroll wheel, and then put it all together with a Teensy board instead of an Arduino board, so it would actually act as a real mouse and keyboard. So that would be the phase 1, which would be a 2x2 with some mouse support. And yeah, the project would be 3D printed on top of that. So this is the start, and hope to see you at the end.